Good afternoon and welcome to the November meeting for the Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority. Unfortunately, Marita Kelly is under the weather and unable to participate today. I believe that Elaine is on her way, so we will look forward to welcoming her when she gets here. But all other board members are here, as well as our two mics. So welcome everybody. Before I move forward with the meeting, I'd like to turn the floor over to our vice chair, Val.
Thank you, Audrey. Just my colleagues, I wanted to say some comments. As you know, I submitted my notice of resignation to my appointing body, Leader Cutler's office. And as I told him, I'll stay through the end of the year, or if he can name a replacement sooner. Have a growing family, and I'm gonna don't want to deprive my family nor the ICA of the time by being divided a little too much. And aside from that, it's been a pleasure. It's going to be 5 years now by the end of the year for me since my original appointment. And it's been an honor to serve alongside many of you some of you for all of that time, and some of you for part of that time. And it's really exciting to see the city's fiscal recovery, beyond our hopes when we first got appointed and the board first began to convene, and a lot of good things happening. And there's still a lot of challenges ahead, and I feel like all the folks working on it are of good heart and a good spirit and good mind, and I'm optimistic that things are going to be better 5 years from now, hopefully as much better as they are over the last 5 years. So, Madam Chair, back to you, and thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. I'll be forever grateful for your support over these. I had 4, but you're right, it was 5, but it's 4 years as vice chair. Your sage counsel, your deft turn of phrase, and your calm personality moderated my rough edges, and I really enjoyed the ride. Thank you very much. So we'll probably do something at the next meeting. At this point, we do not have minutes of the meeting, as I believe Jeffrey told everyone. We will review those at the next meeting. I will tell you that he used some software which was amazing and kind of scary.
I'm not sure if we're going to stay with that, but we tried artificial intelligence minute software, which wrote minutes for us. And I'm not so sure if I like it or not, but I got the first draft from the software. So.
And I would encourage everyone, it would be worthwhile to send it around.
Sure.
Because I think for any small nonprofit that doesn't have, that's relying on a volunteer to do minutes, this thing is amazing, including the executive summaries and the points of the things and the follow-up. I mean,
presentation of you about this AI, they wait for all different kinds of software. It's this whole world of anything you can kind of think of, you can use this generative software. But he was like saying the way you look at like pictures, like where you want to look at it, that minutes that it gets screwed up all the time.
Right.
He said that's like the easiest way to tell. But it's sort of like those same bugs or a couple of things. But yeah, it's a huge time saver. He's looking at it.
right. I think that's also how you tell a good artist or not. They normally always have problems painting the hands, and they'll have their hands behind their back. Try away from it. And so for my chair report, I just wanted to recap a little bit our October meeting where we did approve the city's 5-year financial plan, and then forwarded a letter to the mayor approving, alerting her to the acceptance and including some recommendations. And a special thank you to Ralph and Jeffrey for crafting the message. In the letter, we pointed out 4 recommendations regarding our collective concerns. The fund balance in 2024, precariously low at 7%. NSF asking the city to focus on past receivables and work to restore the interfund transfer to compensate the general fund for the work that the administration does. Economic development, that we need to develop a robust plan as soon as possible. And the OPEB trust, again, encouraging it to be established and the city to exit Act 47 as soon as possible. I do know if anyone wanted to make any comments relative to that, or questions that we need to follow up. I know Marita is to get us, I believe it was a one-pager on each of those 4 issues, and she said to me that we probably will be closer to the end of the year, that she'd be able, to get that.
Thank you, Ralph.
Any other observations, comments? And we're really grateful that Brian's here, because I was gonna talk about the financial update, and I'm glad he's gonna be here to do that. But I think we really need to watch that ending fund balance this year, because the assumption that gets us to the 7% is based on, X number, 21 million, $22 million ending fund balance. So if that goes down 2 million, we're even worse off. And if there are extraordinary expenses that come up, city's not in a position to borrow. So we're really in that catch-22. And if you'll all remember, we as the ICA did issue a bit of caution on paying off all the debt, because that was a pot of money that we would have had where we defined ourselves perhaps in the position as we do today. So we'll really hope that the Act 47 can end and the city can get into a bond market, so that all of its capital expenses, which we all know are pay as can go, have a different option. On the economic development front, I did have a chance to meet with the mayor this week and encouraged her on this front, and said that she could probably ask the ICA to help her pay to get the city membership with PA Downtown, which it still is not a member of, and which is a premier organization to help build economic development plans, because they have all the statistics and they have examples and all of that. And that's less than $1,000. So Marita is supposed to come to us if that is something that they want to pursue. Well, let's turn to Brian, and then that may prompt some other conversation about the 5-year financial plan. Over to you, sir.
All right, thank you, Chair Carter. I appreciate that. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see you again. And Marita, actually, I talked to her this morning. So that's when I got the word. She asked me to attend, which it's fine, but I kind of went into a little bit of a rapid pace to produce something. I like to come, with something meaningful and of an update value. So if I go too long, just give me the signal to wrap it up. Yeah. So there's a handout I distributed at the start, and it's 3 pages. And focusing on the first page is just an update on the general fund. This is the schedule I normally do. It's coming actually due today, the monthly DCED report that we do. And it's self-explanatory as to the quarters there, and then the month ended October, which produced revenue of 1.8 million. And we had a heavier expenditure month. Well, I should say we revenue. This is one of the months that's not typically one of the stronger months of the year, as our revenues ebb and flow throughout. So the net of the net activity was 2.9 million on the negative side. So that brought our cash position down to 21.2 million as of the end of October. And we will have, as we go through this month, in particular into December, we'll have stronger revenue, because we usually have an influx of real estate tax receipts that come in the penalty phase.
Okay.
So that will bolster what we would normally see for a month's worth of revenue. On cash, if you look at the second. I wanted to show how this compared.
Yeah, sorry, in Armenian, we call it participating, not interrupting. I would ask, just to make sure, I think I know the answer, but when you should have the support, when you call it cash basis, you don't count the incumbents with the presentation, correct?
That is correct. Right, yes,
Thank you.
this is straight cash. So on the second page is the comparative to where we were last year at this time. And there's really a couple of quick items that stand out that readily reconcile the difference. For 22, that cash position as of the end of October, much stronger, 34.8, but then you may recall in December, as we got to there last year, we had that first big partial payment to AMVAC. So factoring that out, that adjusts that cash down to 22.8. And then on the flip side for current year, like I showed on the first page, 21.2. If add back the effect of what we weren't experiencing as much last year, medical claim expenditures are unfortunately stronger this year by that amount of 42,000 through the first 10 months of the year. Stronger than last year. And also we've had expenditures on the legal side for the firm that's doing the work for the incinerator litigation matter. There's records review, and there's also actual legal work. They get rolled up into that total. So that was not, as you know, a typical expense for the year. It's unique in 2023.
Brian, you might, since you pointed out the medical claims were stronger this year, you might want to remind the board that Harrisburg is self-insured when it comes to medical. So there is not a medical insurance company, health insurance company involved. It is actually the city paying the way.
Yes, Jeff, that's correct. The claims that happen are what we have to pay, you know, and that includes health, prescription drug, and dental claim.
Recoverable with stop loss, right?
We do, and it's all about timing. We have received some payments earlier this year on the stop loss nature for them because of the claims getting up to that level. And we may, hopefully we'll be receiving one before the end of the year.
And just, I know that I saw Kathy's expression about the legal bills, but obviously it sort of is what it is, kind of.
It's strong, but we actually budgeted this time last year when we consulted with Neil, the sense was to go with a rather high budget amount of $2 million. So you can see we're not, and that doesn't mean that, oh, we're doing this much this year and we're going to pick up the remaining portion next year. He feels like it's looking maybe somewhere between 1 million and 1.2 million in total. So we are budget right now, as you know, we're budget building for next year. So we're including an estimate for next year's budget as well. But right now that figure is 250,000 for next year.
Okay. And obviously that is seen as an investment on behalf of the city, who hopes to recover something from the litigation.
That's the ultimate hope or goal on that. Yeah, there'll be some bang for those bucks.
If it's okay, Madam Chair, if I could ask another question while I have Brian's attention. I noticed that council did some, as they often do, some budget amendments. Recently, I believe it was at their last meeting.
As recent as last night.
As last night.
Yeah.
And if you could just talk a little bit about why that money is, I know it happens throughout the year from time to time, but why the city was rebalancing some of the accounts in the budget.
Sure. Yes. Last night they reviewed, actually a week ago, the fifth proposed budget reallocation for the year, which is about right on par as we go through the year. It was introduced at a work session last week, and they voted and approved it unanimously last night. There were 6 exhibits, and of those, the ones that stood out the most include there was a budget adjustment for medical, like what we're projecting for the end of the year, which the budget adjustment there was $3 million to increase that line. based on, what we've been seeing of late. I mean, we're averaging about 1.1 million every month, which is extraordinary. Usually it's around somewhere between 900,000 and 950,000, all those three claims. So, and I mean, unfortunately, there are claims that are just out there that are of that nature, and that the medical condition is that severe.
Sure.
So, so there was that. Also, the Broad Street Market fire occurred, and not reflected in these numbers, but we have received an insurance proceeds check from the carrier of 4.4 million. So that was part on the one exhibit to allocate that revenue in anticipation of costs that would be happening between now and the end of the year. So it was accordingly allocated. Another item that we just talked about last night, which was a late exhibit, but it's very critical, insurance. And it kind of ties back to Broad Street Market. It also was impacted by the water damage that happened at City Government Center earlier this year. And I'm still not over it, but the premium has increased on our property insurance. And I'm not kidding, it goes from roughly $150,000 to 1 point. The increase is 1.5 million.
Wow.
So certainly that got everybody's attention.
Sure.
And there needs to be, as council, I mean, they understood, and hopefully I did a good enough job explaining it, but they understood, but their concern is that, we need to, and our administration is aware of this, to take a closer look at property assets, and to really get them fine-tuned when it comes to this. I can't believe, and also to explore other options.
Sure.
I can't, I can't imagine that.
You have there's a lot of property that's owned by the city.
And it seems like it's, there's the event itself, but are they also factoring in something about our inventory of assets? They're wondering, oh, that happens at your city government center. What's to say that, some other insurable asset that you have is not subject to age risk or
Sure.
whatever positive.
That's important.
Yeah.
Is that increase all in liability insurance? Do you have any cyber insurance as a second question?
We, in the line that we account for that, it includes property, cyber, and crime. But they're all separate policies. And cyber and crime remain unchanged. It's all the property policy of like exceeding. I'm understating it even by saying it that way. It's just amazing, extraordinary.
It shall be shopping for carriers, if nothing else.
Yeah. Well, the city's primarily worked for a very long time with Marsh, the broker, but maybe it's time to explore it.
Gotta put everything on the table with that kind of cost, yeah.
And my understanding is that, as you said, it wasn't the Broad Street Market as much as it was the flood. And apparently they found out that it leaked because the coupling failed. And so that means they have no idea how many of these other couplings could fail and when they could fail. And then, as you said, what other buildings might have had that same
Similar
sort of,
condition.
yeah, so.
Still scary.
It's
a lot of money.
It's a big place.
Madam Chair, may I direct a question to Mr. Hill?
Oh, sure.
Is there a self-insurance alternative out there that you know about?
Normally it's bones, knee kind of coverage, but, my associations offer property casualty liability.
Yeah,
programs.
and
I
the
don't know.
Pennsylvania Municipal League, which the city is a member of, does provide property liability insurance through with a discount for municipalities in Pennsylvania. So they do have a program in the municipal league that would be, but who knows what that would cost? You would
Yeah.
have to get a quote and see and compare it. But they do have a carrier that they work specifically with for municipalities through the municipal league, and the city is a member of the league. So they could explore that as an alternative place to get insurance.
But our experience was typically when there was bigger shop like this is when the county had not done adequate inventory of all of the property assets, and we went in and went through that with you. But when you realize you had 5 times the assets that you would have to.
I can attest that an annual asset valuation for the insurance carrier is something that is good management practice for any municipality. Changes every year, and values change because places assets get older, and some because they've been replaced. So staying on top of that asset valuation is an important part of the cost of insurance, liability insurance. So I'm sure that the administration is going to be proactive going forward. No doubt with these numbers.
Definitely, yeah, but I mean, Maria and Dan very much aware, as is like Joni, who's works in HR, but she's close to the insurance
Sure.
aspects and administration, so. Yeah, we have to work on that, and of course, that's impacting what's happening right now as far as building the 2024 budget. So we're still this week working on really fine tuning expenditures in all departments in the general fund.
You say 4 budget, allocations are just 3.
Last night was good.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the components that made up.
Oh, well, there were 6 exhibits. Those are 3. The other ones were actually different funds that were relatively material.
Correct.
So to wrap up page 2, the comparative cash balance, you can see that works out where the adjusted cash positions are fairly comparable to each other when we work out those items, those adjustments. The third thing is the neighborhood services fund, and it is through again the first 10 months of this year, and it is still performing in reasonable fashion. It's essentially break even on the main part of the neighborhood services fund. The cash position is slightly up compared to where it was at the beginning of the year. And again, this is similar. It's cash basis fund balance. And the intergovernmental municipalities are included in here as well, the 3 boroughs. And that gets you to the middle part for the total of those the full fund, which includes public works and also the parks maintenance portion of the fund. And the other 2 columns are the old sanitation and disposal funds, which had some residual balances that are left over from liens that are still in effect through the city lien system. So for the city, the overall cash is approximately $600,000 from where it was at the end of last year. Any questions on those schedules?
I have a quick question relative to those figures. I appreciate your report to the DCD and then also the controller's report that we get with the revenue. And I was trying to wrap my head around, and I happen to have a copy here. Because the departmental budgets at the end of September were at 51%, should have been at 75%. But then the other revenues were at 120%, which should have been at 75%. So I was just trying to figure out, was it a misallocation, or like the other revenues are up by 1.2 over last year, and then they're down significantly relative to the whole. And where that would be, or does it does it jump out at you? And if not, you can answer another.
I think on this particular section, and I think they mean like percentage of like budget collected. Right. So interest and property interest income, which is like under the other revenue classification, I think we just under budgeted
Okay,
revenue for the year because of what's happened with interest rates throughout the year.
but it's the miscellaneous, and it's, I think that
Yeah.
always, as we look at things, whenever we see a big lump in a miscellaneous. we
Who knows?
love to try and figure out what it is, especially when it's in the,
Could that have been the insurance check from,
That
But-
it's
could-
not that large.
no, it
I
could-
put it in the form of a
it-
question to you outside of the meeting.
The one thought I had, it could very well be the money that we city received from PennDOT from the I-83 expansion,
oh,
which
okay.
is roughly, say, $500,000, which is not typical revenue for the city of the year. So I believe that I can
Okay.
review that further, but that comes.
unfortunately, in the course of any given year, things come up that are unanticipated revenues and unanticipated expenses. It's very hard to follow the budget, but I know you guys are working hard on trying to digest things and prepare for the 2024 budget right now.
Sure, it's like, yeah, two different major projects, you know.
Right.
Right. I don't know which one's the more demanding. They're both pretty strong. I just have two more.
Please,
Is that okay?
that is perfectly fine.
They're not nearly as long. For the general fund, through the first 10 months of the year, our revenue, when you factor out, like there is a fund balance appropriation that's included in there. And looking at just the original fund balance, and this was before we increased it to what we did with AMBAC. If you take that out and look at our total revenues through October, based on the original budget net of the fund balance, our revenues are 89% collected through October. So that's a strong indicator that we're still with 2 months to go, that we're minimizing how much we will actually use. I think of fund balance, you know, based on that budget. On the expenditure side, and this comes back to Ralph's question about encumbrances, through October, the cash basis percentage of our budget is a little over 3/4 or 75%, 76%. With encumbrances through October, it's 82.7%, which is like right in the sweet spot of October as far as, you know, the months if you allocate it out. So our expenses are reasonable, you know, based on that calculation and based on the budget. Any questions
On that,
on that? And the last item I mentioned, you know, we're building budget, and we've entered the revenue into the proposed revenue into the munis system for next year. And I reminded everybody that, you know, with working with Marita and Dan, that it's important to. I want to come back to the report that was just submitted, that you reviewed and approved our revenue. That revenue is based on, it's a little over, not in total, but the real revenue of what we're putting in the budget is a little over 70 million. So that's based on, that's a reasonable figure, based on what the city normally collects. The total revenue that will be going in is much higher because of the ARPA money that is to come in, but that's to be expended out for the program initiatives that the mayor and council are still reviewing and considering. In that too, there's in the report we just did, we have a projected use of fund balance is a little over 5 million. So I just wanted to let everybody know as we build this budget, we should keep that basis in mind, you know, to how we get to where we want to be with expenses. In other words, don't push up any further use of fund balance.
Yeah.
Don't go beyond that 70 million.
That's of actual revenue,
Real revenue.
right? Live within your means.
So we don't strangle our future budgets.
Sure. That's good advice.
Thank you for being the cheerleader.
It's drilled into me. So it's a shame not to utilize that.
Right, that's wise counsel, because in the 5-year report, we have revenues, as you indicated, much higher, 99.1, and expenses at 101. So it's good to keep in mind that there are those one-time costs, and we do see that as we go into FY25. That all goes down again. And it's the ARPA money, and is part of that also the DCD money? Because ARPA we don't, we have the cash, we don't have to get reimbursed.
That's right.
But
That's
the
right.
DCD 14 million
The
for the
big-
parks,
Yeah, and that portion really isn't affecting the general fund because it's separately collected revenue wise and expended out of federal grants.
okay.
Fund. So that's with the ARPA funds, that's federal money too, but the city, the law bureau developed for council that bill or ordinance that was passed that allowed us to pull that fully into the general fund as revenue replacement, and now it needs to be formally appropriated out, which is what I just talked about,
Right.
that difference in real revenue and total revenue. You're seeing almost 100 million for next year.
Brian?
Madam Chair, while we have Brian here, would you care to know an update on the city audit status from
Oh.
previous year?
He doesn't want
He's-
to.
Well, he knows the answer, despite having no time to work on anything. So,
We went through, the audit committee actually met back on October 25th. And between when you participated in the August meeting, we did complete all of the internal control updates, narratives, and the internal control testing that they do, which includes receipts, disbursements, payroll. They also tested some of the utility billing system on trash. So that is all completed. From when we met on October 25th to this point, I've worked a little bit on some of the cap, some of the other areas, but I'm not where I am at a point where I can say it's any of those areas are done for progress. But I did talk to Meyer Duxel last week and to coordinate the services they're going to provide for audit preparation assistance in a few of our areas. So, and they are looking to, they're comfortable with that approach. Again, they would like to assist us in that way. But to be honest, between the end of October and now, it's been a lot of extra work for me on the budget side. And also we've had these events that have happened with insurance renewal, trying to secure the insurance proceeds from the Liberty Mutual was our carrier. So it's not as far along as I'd like it to be, but based on where we are right now. But I'm hoping that I can get moving on that, more focused on that at this point between now and the end of the year.
thank you.
Brian, do you have any update on parking revenues at this time? Anything you're prepared to share with us?
I haven't heard anything as far as, anticipation of any of that revenue coming in, the city's priority payment or the ground needs. But I think there was a good email that came just this week from our parking coordinator that I think there was an amount of debt service that was due that was able to be paid by the interest earnings from where the funds are being invested. Maybe that's a good sign as far as being able to not go further into default with that debt. So, but as far as the revenues, again, we're not projecting or budgeting for that revenue for next year. At least I haven't heard that that's changed.
Thank you.
Sure.
And, you mentioned the budget coming up, and traditionally our board makes sure we cover all the budget hearings so that we can, render an opinion on the budget itself. And so I believe the initial presentation is on November 28th.
That's right. So I first I heard it was the 21st, but it got reminded everybody that it's the fourth Tuesday in November. So it's the introduction of the budget is, you're right, it's the 28th, the Tuesday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Ruin everybody's appetite.
And so I can definitely go to city council in person and listen to that one, but then there are traditionally 3 meetings. I believe that's
The
about
budget
the
hearing.
average, the hearings, and we try and cover those. And so as soon as we have those set, I'll have Jeffrey send it out. Good news is they're normally Zoom, so you can watch it from the comfort of your own house with your popcorn. And then we just ask you to send a summary of,
What was
you know,
discussed?
what you heard.
And I would ask that the administration assist me in organizing this. You guys do great PowerPoints, sometimes minutes before the meetings, which is okay. But as long as I can get copies of what's discussed even after the fact, that helps me with the board, try to organize their thoughts so that they can give you a cogent opinion on the budget. So
Otherwise, we have to know it's
screenshots with our phones. It's better to get copies of the PowerPoints
Forward it out.
to whoever's. I would appreciate it. Sure. Like I said,
So I believe then the hearings will actually happen.
we have.
First week in December.
Sure. Yeah, I got my popcorn ready.
Well, actually, we'll let you leave if you're fine, because I know. Either
Back to the office. Home and office. Same thing.
You're one constant, because you are the constant. Over the 5 years, Brian's always been there. Oh, thank you for that.
Oh, yes, you're welcome. I appreciate that.
Someone else is doing
For like night and day, right?
Passing, ships passing in the night.
But I'm sorry, yeah.
I'm not going very far.
We'll get him involved in something.
So Jeffrey, now over to you.
Okay, so where are we? First, the paid bills report. I think everybody received yesterday a copy of our paid bills for the month. We're finishing the period with a balance of $107,887.01, which is still a healthy balance, and we are waiting on remittance from DCED, which I'm sure will be soon, on another installment of money. Maybe, who knows? I sent them an email this week saying, hey, does anybody know where that is? And I didn't get any response, but you know the states, no disrespect. So I'm sure it'll show up at some point. And our interest year to date is $24.50. Thank you to FNB Bank, which is doing a bang up job managing our account. The second thing, I think everybody on the board knows that it is that time of year for the Section 207 annual report, which is prepared, and we'll have time, hopefully between now and our December meeting, to finalize that document, which is then shared. Oh, I'm sorry, if you could remind me, does that go to the appropriations committees or?
It does.
It does appropriations.
And then we also send it to all the appointing authorities as well.
Okay, good. So we sent it to a whole group of people. Okay. So we've already started working on that. And of course, the biggest part of that is the audit of the ICA's financial transactions, which of course, compared to the city of Harrisburg is minuscule. But you did receive, I believe, yesterday by email, a draft financial statement we're actually dealing with the 2022-2023 state fiscal calendar. So we're doing our books for that. Yes,
Would you like to?
Yes, I'm sure you would. My preparation duties are very tiny, but it is good, and we have a qualified opinion preliminary from our audit, which is ZA is our auditor, And they did do testing of our transactions as well, just like they do the city. And they have not found any errors this year so far, which is good. And we should have our final audit report by our next meeting, and then that goes incorporated into our annual report for the state, as well as a legal ad that we must take out in the what's called the state bulletin, Pennsylvania bulletin, which we're required to do, which I prepare and get published usually sometime in the first quarter of the following year. So that should all be taken care of shortly, and that keeps us on track. We do have a management letter that required execution tonight for ZA, and if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, so we have it in the record, if we can have an authorization for yourself and Kathy and myself to sign that letter, even though we've already signed it.
And this is really for engaging them.
Engaging them and committing to the process and the fee, which is $1,650, also much less than what the city pays. I'd appreciate if we can give approval so that we can execute that and send it back to the auditor.
Certainly. So I move that we take a vote to approve retaining ZA for next year for the audit. For a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Excellent. And
Before we leave that.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about their concern about the lack of notes? Because that was in the letter, and I think it would be good to.
I have not gotten feedback from them specifically on what they're looking for. I'm hoping that by our December meeting, I have a better understanding of what that comment meant.
Right.
We haven't done anything different this year than we've done in any other year. So I was surprised by that, but if I can get a clarification, if they want us to do more detail, I'm sure we'd be happy to do more detail. So I'll know that by our December meeting.
I just want to make sure we're in a position that if anyone reads it.
Constructive criticism.
I have a feeling that's to do with, cash basis.
Right.
It probably needs more notations than perhaps we have.
Well, I think when I do the monthly, I adjust our balance. We have certain things which come directly out of our checking account, such as our website hosting or other miscellaneous expenses. I track those, and of course, you approve those expenses. But when I take them out in the checking account register, I do them as lump sum. I just do an adjustment for the month's difference. I don't write each transaction out. I do it on a checkbook register, on a computer spreadsheet, which I give them, but I don't put it in the checkbook register. I have everything duplicated and triplicated in many places. But if that's what they mean, that's easy enough to. Once again, that's how I've been doing it for 5 years, but I'd be more than happy to put more detail in. It's not a problem.
Right, so
I'll find out for sure by December.
we'll talk about that.
Sure. That is all I have on the report from the authority manager.
Great, thank you, Joe. Any questions? So in other business, I just wanted to put out 2 issues. One is revisiting the number of meetings that we have for the ICA. And it seemed appropriate to check the act just in case. And it says the board shall meet as it deems appropriate, but at least once during each quarter of the fiscal year. So I would suggest that I feel very comfortable pulling us back to 6 meetings a year or fewer. I don't know how you all feel. Timing them appropriate to the action that we need to take during the course of the year. And then I know that Elaine has a standing conflict with our Wednesday meeting. And so I didn't know if it might make sense to explore if for Thursday or for Tuesday would work. Because I think yours is a meeting that starts at 5:30.
Yeah, and then most of the time, this meeting runs quickly enough that I can get there. It's a little close, but. I mean, if this works out best for everyone, I would say just keep it
And of course, if it's less times a year, then there's less possible
Right.
conflicts.
That will help.
I have a conflict on Thursday. That sometimes changes between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock.
There's no perfect time.
Right. So maybe we stick with Wednesday, knowing that we're gonna reduce the conflict that then we might have.
Yeah,
We could also move the meeting earlier. It doesn't have to be at 4 PM. It could be 3:30 PM, and that might help Elaine.
yeah.
I don't know what everybody's schedule is.
For those who have other- right. Many of us are retired.
So
But there are some of us.
I'm usually here at 3 anyway, so.
Um, Okay, all right, so move 3 o'clock, all agree?
3 o'clock, okay.
And so,
Well, I have to confirm this with
Oh, right.
Temple University.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that will not be a problem, but until I confirm it, it's proposed.
Okay. All right.
And every other month, or do you want to just leave it,
Well, so I
or what do you have for us?
so happen to have a piece of paper. Where I pulled out what you had in
Sure.
addition to your conflicts. But so I think it's always good to meet the first month,
Okay,
January.
okay,
And then the April is important because that's when we get into our final preparation of the Act 30, I mean, the section 230 report. Then it seems that there's a lull over the summer, or at least late spring, whatever. But then we really should meet in August in preparation for the 5-year financial plan update, which is coming. Although that could be questionable because it doesn't arrive until the end of the month. So we could take the whole summer off, except it has to be a meeting in that quarter, right? I did not figure that out. And then
February,
we have to meet in September,
April, May,
because that would be the meeting
July,
that we
September.
respond to that. And then I think we have to meet in December.
For
to
the budget.
authorize the 207
Also, the budget is,
and the budget. So, so that was 4 definites if we cross out the August one. Are there other things that I'm missing that we have to be together to act on?
we have been, if I might just offer for consideration. We have been advertising on a month-by-month basis. So so we're not pre-advertising the year as you can, but we have not been doing that. So we could, in theory, in essence, keep the schedule and just cancel meetings. Because they're not advertised anywhere, it's just amongst ourselves.
I think I would. I'm not a great person, starting late or canceling.
Yeah,
But I think it also makes it harder to plan around. I mean,
okay,
right now, you have conflicts, and
Well-
some conflicts that can't move. I have a potential conflict. It would be really great if I can, and it's actually happens to coincide in May, which is when you have a conflict.
that's one of my conflicts, yes.
Yeah, so I prefer not, just for planning purposes.
Okay.
I would actually
Prefer just knowing ahead of time.
prefer to call an additional meeting rather than.
Cancel. Okay, so forget what I said, that's fine.
Yeah, I could do.
Yeah. So once again, I got lost a little track there. If you could just list your meetings that you were saying January,
Should we schedule more than 4 officially? Because the 4 that I had were January, April, September and December. And there's only one conflict.
yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about me.
yeah, I mentioned August, but then you were saying, maybe not.
Maybe not, because in order to receive
April, May,
the 5-year financial. plan,
July,
I have to
August,
be in position
September.
of actually receiving it
October, November,
3 days after that meeting. So there wouldn't be that much to talk about.
As a practical matter, though, I recall it the last 2 years, the 5-year plan took multiple meetings for the authority to approve. After an initial review, comments back to the city, then
So Brian's gonna make sure that the next
The next year is gonna be.
And I have agreed to meet with Marita beforehand, but so.
That would be the October meeting.
Yeah.
Adding back in the October meeting.
My father was in the Navy, so that should pass down to me somehow. Sailing through the calm waters.
So do those five, does that make sense? Because the end of the year reports, easy peasy.
Yeah.
Jeffrey's got that down pat. And then the 2:30 report is really just Al pulling it together and having one meeting to discuss it, and then Jeffrey and the rest of us will together. So, so we'll go with January, April, August, no, sorry,
Oh.
January, April, September, October, December.
Okay,
Going with the third Wednesday in December.
December's the 18th.
Yeah,
Right, that's the only one that's not the fourth Wednesday. So it's for 24 it'd be January 24th, April 24th, coincidentally, September 25th, October 23rd. Get that right?
Yep.
And December 18th.
Yep.
Okay. And I will require just to make sure that 3 p.m. start time, those dates.
Yep.
I have to sign a new contract for this room. Of course, as you know, I sign a contract, but they don't charge us, but we do still sign a contract. It's a liability contract. And we give them proof of insurance, which we have to get from our carrier. So
all right, I don't think that is any additional
I don't think so.
business.
Got it.
And then the other thing to just reflect on a little bit, is meeting guests. And I thought maybe if we could just take a moment to brainstorm about that, and then we can add more, and then we can begin to plot them throughout those. So Marita really encouraged us to have Keystone come at some point, and they were gonna talk about revenue projections as they see them. There's also someone, I think his name is Mark something. Is there someone who's working up the, and I'll look at that. I wrote it back in my notes at one point. The mayor and Dan both said that he would be a good person, but it seemed to me that he would be lumped with that. Dan Miller has said he'd be willing to come talk to us if we wanted him to come talk about the receivables, the annual bill, and all that sort of stuff. Then I think Dave West, who's the head of public works, and certainly that falls in with the NSF, but then as importantly, there's a new reorganization which has almost everything in parks and recreation reporting through to him.
That's shifted up to his purview.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So it might be good to have him, and at that point, we may want to ask Sasha, who's the parks person, because it's.
I almost want to think of her in terms of like a deputy
Yeah.
to Dave.
Okay, so maybe at the same time as Dave.
And then Austin is the parallel deputy for the Renaissance Triumvirate now.
He would be, yes, he would be Dave's right hand man or deputy for public works specifically. Sasha's more on the parks. and
Park side.
recreation.
Um,
Sasha, for that fund.
And then I didn't know if at some point we want to pull CRW back, and especially given the proximity work going on. But that might be a little later in 2020.
I would suggest that's a very important financial component to what goes on in the city.
Right, and then the final one that I had in my sort of brainstorming was having Denise and Jason to talk about economic development. Any others sort of brainstorms? There's one who we've had, who we haven't had. Who we could have had, who we should have.
Yeah, I do. Good.
So maybe, we can start the year, and rather than, obviously, aren't gonna press anything in December meetings, but maybe getting Keystone to come in.
Sure.
in January, to sort of align ourselves with where the projections and the budget came from. We can get a better sense of our confidence with those as well. So let's start with that, and then we can figure out the rest of these.
Okay.
You wouldn't mind that.
I will not mind asking.
And then ask Marita, she knows who the work guy is.
Mark Anthony, you think? Something like that.
No,
Does he might work for Keystone, do you think?
No, I think.
No, somebody else.
And I'll find, it's on the. side.
You're not sure which subject though? I'll
It
find.
was definitely either statistics or project management or.
I'll talk.
something.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other business? Oh, what's Mike and Tex's last name?
Mike Hughes,
That's him.
he's the administrator. That's.
It's not Mark, it's not Anthony, it's Mike Hughes.
All right. Yes.
Sorry.
I speak with consulting firms,
Yeah.
like doing the ARPA consulting.
Thank you for Brian over there.
I know at one point we had talked about inviting, I forgot this other gentleman's name, but I'm sure you know who it is, Brian. The person for the parking, is that for
Oh.
Tremont or
Well,
the person who sort of monitors all the money?
like I mentioned, communication about, the pet bonds, the debts, and Rich Kotz, he's the parking administrator, I want to say, of Harrisburg Parking Authority, which is still, a functioning entity.
Right.
It's actually a component unit of the city. So, so he's a city employee, but when you say Tremont,
Tremont.
I'm thinking of Mr. Gass, is his last name?
I'll talk to Maria.
SS, can't remember his first.
But Maria and it's totally up to the board, but Maria suggested that to get a better sense of that complicated flow of money,
Yeah.
you might want to talk to them. It's just so you understand it as well as you can. So that was another possible guest at some meeting.
Let's see, does it make sense to vote? It seems like using historic projections, given that these taxes.
Yeah.
Would match.
Yeah.
Very well for them.
See what I can do.
And Mike's, just to add, Mike's like, it's the mercantile side of this. He's not like real estate taxes or EIP or LST, it's the mercantile.
Oh, well, in that case, I should have.
What?
It's like. We'll see.
We'll have enough things, right?
Let's do Keystone Keystone rate projections first, and then let's figure out where use goes, or it wouldn't be the same if we wanted to have someone come for 20 minutes and use come for 20 minutes, but they're not.
It's different subjects,
Yeah.
but and then we'd be sitting for 40 minutes for 2 presentations. So, but we're starting at 3, so we'll be done early. Sounds good.
Okay. Anything else? Other business?
If I may, I just thought of one thing that I was remiss on, you were asking about the audits and what I've been working on lately. I left out the Department of the Auditor General was just over, and it was one auditor, he completed the audits of all 3 pension plans for 2 years, 21 and 22, and he was very methodical. Really extended, so that took a bit of time, but that audit, so that was on my radar quite a bit for the last. So.
Good. All right. Well, we do have a person in the audience. I don't know if you have any questions for us today.
Yeah.
Okay, no public comment, Madam Chair, so back to you.
Right, now we can all figure out how we're gonna spend our 14 hours. So thank you all. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? Oh, we don't need one. No, but-
We're all good. 5 o'clock. Yeah,
Very good.
excellent. Good night, everybody.